Africa is re-engaged with industrialization and is recommitted to realizing that dream from all those years ago. But what will it take? What does industrialization mean? Why are we industrializing? And are there different ways of industrializing, and what would be their impacts, and how do we pursue them? To answer these and other questions, we're joined by one of Africa's greatest intellectuals and the co-founder and current director of the Third World Forum, Professor Samir Amin. Professor Amin, welcome to Dar es Salaam and welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for this nice invitation.
You have argued that we should look at industrialization in a different way, that how we view it right now is narrow and quite limited. Could you please explain what you mean by this?
Thank you again for inviting me, particularly on such a very important, crucial problem about industrialization. Now, industrialization is a concept which goes far beyond just having industries in a place, in a country. Now, the conventional liberal, neoliberal concept is that industrialization is just synonymous to having industries. And that can be measured either by the place of industry in GDP or by the number of workers employed in industries, in manufacturing. No, this is very superficial, but this is the conventional view. Now, if we admit this very simple and superficial concept, then we could have industries without having industrialization. Those industries, each industrial establishment will be de facto, and in many cases even de jure, just a subcontracting for monopoly capital of the major industrialized advanced countries, Europe, North America, Japan. Just subcontractors, benefiting, offering either cheap manpower, which is the usual case, or cheap specific raw materials, minerals in particular, or access, monopoly access to the local or the regional market. Now, this is what the World Bank is suggesting for Africa and for all countries in the world, except within the industrialized, highly developed triad, United States, Europe, and Japan. And they are just suggesting that. Now, that leads nowhere. It doesn't lead to industrialization. Industrialization is a process, a very complex process of constructing an integrated industrial system. What is the difference between an integrated industrial system, having it, or constructing it? It takes a long time to have it, and having just industries. An integrated industrial system is a system in which most of the industrial establishments find their outlets in other industrial establishments. That is, they provide inputs for others, or they are inputs, or they are outputs for others, which means that they are, in that sense, integrated. The fortune or the success of one is related to the success of the others. Now, that is building an industrial system. Such an industrial integrated system has been constructed historically as national systems, which means systems conceived and built within the boundaries of a nation state. Historically, it was the major nation states of Western and Central Europe, Britain, France, Germany, United States, and Japan later. Now, should we say that, consider that this is no more possible, and that we cannot have a national integrated productive system, industrial system, because of so-called globalization. Now, globalization is nothing new. Globalization is just the fact that whatever integrated at a national level is an industrial system, it is also simultaneously related with others. It imports from other countries, it exports to other countries. But imports and exports to other countries are in an auto-centered system submitted to the logic of the building of the national integrated system. They are not commanding, they are not the prime motor for the building of industries. They are the prime motor is the internal integration, and of course a national integrated system does not mean an autarkic system separated from the rest of the world, which does not import anything and does not export anything. No, that does not exist. And in that sense, a national integrated system, whatever developed it is, remains partly dependent on others. But this is a shared dependency because it operates in a global system where the partners are, if not equal, at least able to participate together to the building of the global system. While having industries, isolated industrial establishments, isolated from one another, does not lead to that, does not give you the power to participate in the building of the global industrial system. That is the difference. I think that the conventional economy, which is the economy which unfortunately is now taught in all universities in the world as if it were the exclusive way of thinking in economy, is very superficial, and it is ultimately wrong. But it is very useful for monopoly capital because precisely it gives the argument in favor of confusing, of rejecting industrialization and suggesting instead building sub-industries. Now, if we come to Africa in particular, the issue of industrialization has been raised in the past, in the glorious past, in the time of NAM, after the Bandung conference, 1955, which was followed in a few years later, only 5 years later, by the independence of a majority of African countries. And some of those countries, among which Tanzania in the time of Nyerere, had a concept that moving ahead, having reconquered political independence was only the first step. It was the prerequisite, the condition for being able eventually to go beyond. And to go beyond, among other things, by moving into industrialization. Now, what could be achieved in the African countries at that time was quite limited, but it was a beginning. But for many reasons that I shall not discuss here now, that was stopped at a certain point, and we moved back to, I would say, I would not call it neo-colonial, I would call it even colonial system. Now, the colonial systems, at that time it was for Tanganyika, just as for other colonies of Africa, whether British or French or Belgian or Portuguese, denied completely not only the right for industrialization, but the need for industrialization. We were compelled to be just producers of some raw materials, basically agricultural, but also eventually some mineral resources, such as copper for your neighbor country Zambia and the Congo, or such as other raw material, mineral wealth. But basically agricultural products. In the case of Tanganyika, it was groundnuts, paid at, I would say, at a peanut price. If you look at today's discourse of the Western powers vis-à-vis with respect to the development of Africa, and this vision is formulated in writing in the Charter of Accra and the Accra and Paris over conditionality for providing to African countries so-called aid, but also opening access to the financial market. What is being said in the Accra and Paris conventions is that African countries, which are called associated to the European Union countries, cannot have access to foreign investment coming from the West, coming from the Triad, from Europe, but also from the United States or Japan, cannot have access to the financial markets, which means to the City of London or to Wall Street or to some other financial markets in Germany or in France, without accepting the conditionality, that is liberalism, neoliberal policies, which the blueprint is very well known, privatization, blah, 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 but also with respect to industries, no industrial system, just accept those industries which will come to you because they find some profit in that. As I said, cheap manpower, or access to some mineral resources, or access to the market, the local market. Now, that is, we are back to square zero, to the beginning, before Bandung, before the independence of African countries. Now we must reconquer that right to go beyond. And to go beyond means moving in constructing an integrated industrial system. Now, what is being said usually is that, oh, that is very nice for big countries like China, India, Brazil, continental countries with hundreds of millions or billion or more population. But our African countries are very small, and this is impossible. I'm saying, well, this is only partly true. It is true for Gambia, for instance, or for Equatorial Guinea, but it is not true for a number, or the majority even, of African countries. I'm saying that today, Tanzania, with around 50 million.
53, somewhere there.
Okay, it's not a small country. Many European countries have no more in population. A country like Nigeria is a huge country, it's not a small country. Even Egypt, Ethiopia with around 90 million people, Congo with around 80 million, but I was saying Tanzania 50 million and others. Tanzania has a population which is even more than South Africa. Therefore, why we cannot conceive? Now, of course, a national integrated industries in such circumstances will not be a copy of what was achieved, say, in Belgium in the 19th century. Belgium in the 19th century had a population far less than Tanzania today. But a modern industrial system, perhaps it will have not cover the whole range of industries, such as what is possible in, say, today, United States or very large countries, but quite a wide range of industries. Now, of course, and that goes without saying, that would be made, I wouldn't dare to say easier, less difficult, if you have real cooperation among African countries, at least at the regional and sub-regional levels, which means that the importance of Pan-Africanism. Pan-Africanism should not be looked at just as race solidarity, for instance, between so-called black people. No, or emotional solidarity of countries which all of them were colonies of European countries. No, it must be looked at as solidarity between brother peoples, different, but brothers, because they have the same position, submitted position, subordinated position in the global system, to support one another. Supporting one another, it's not the idea of common markets, it's far more than that. Common market is not a good way of organizing integration, regional, sub-regional integration, because the concept of common market always operate to the benefit of the stronger or the least weak, let's say. A common market between Nigeria, say, and a neighbor small country, Benin, would of course concentrate all the benefits to Nigeria. So it's not the pattern of solidarity should be conceived as building complementarities. Let's take the case of Eastern and some other countries around. Zambia, your neighbor country, has copper and could develop, as out of copper industries, a lot of industries which are using copper to a certain extent. There is a Tanzam, well, it's in bad shape now, but it had been built in order to precisely facilitate not only the independence of the region from apartheid South Africa, but also made possible their building of complementarities. So why not having, for instance, copper industries producing not only the raw material but copper in Zambia, and this being exported to Dar es Salaam by the Tanzam, and having Dar es Salaam or along the railroad industries transforming this copper into copper products from tubes and so on, etc.
Just if I could jump in, why would Tanzania, for example, in this case, buy from Zambia if it's cheaper to get from the global market, as it were? Is that not been the kind of crux, the issue?
Because in the longer run, it is not always to the benefit of a country to buy cheaper. If buying cheaper means killing the possibility of developing at home in your country similar or complementary activities, in the long run it is not paying. So you should not compare, and this is also a very important point against conventional economics. Conventional economics is very short-sighted. It doesn't forget completely about the longer run. Of course, if you are a person, you go to the market, if you find between two sellers the same product at different price, it's your immediate advantage to buy the cheaper. But that's very trivial. Should not be extrapolated to nations, to countries. In the 19th centuries and even today, many industrial countries, advanced countries, they give priority in one way or another to a national industry, even at higher prices, because of that interdependency and integration of the various industries. We should also keep in mind the longer run.
And what kind of practical steps then? I mean, it sounds like you would need to, at least to an extent, de-link from the global market in
Yes.
making those kinds of choices.
Yes.
What can you do to prepare your economy, your people for that kind of a delinking, and how do you select how and when to link and not link?
Yeah, you see, you are right. It's my concept of delinking, which was popular in the experiences of advanced national liberation movements, including Tanzania in the time of Nyerere, which is not synonymous to autarky. It doesn't mean that you are not going to import anything and therefore export nothing. No, but it means trying to submit your external relations, imports and exports, to the logic of developing your internal economy. It is reversing, it is the opposite of so-called structural adjustment. Structural adjustment of the World Bank, of conventional economics, is just that you adjust to the trends which are dominating at global level, that you adjust to the needs of the stronger. I put it in a caricature way. It is requested to Congo to adjust to the needs of US. It is not suggested that US should adjust to the needs of Congo. Now, delinking is Congo trying, alone it cannot, but with cooperation and with solidarity among countries of the South, it can compel the others, the stronger, to at least partly adjust to your demands.
And what about the case of a country like, say, South Korea, that has industrialized and developed rapidly in 40 years, following a very conventional method?
No, it did not follow a conventional. It was state capitalism. It was a capitalism in which the companies, even if formally private, were completely submitted to political power. To the extent we see it with this scandal now, of being a source of massive corruption of the political class, up to the presidency. But anyway, it was not a conventional. South Korea was allowed to do what was forbidden to others, for instance to Nyerere's Tanzania or to Nasser's Egypt, for political geostrategic reasons, because Korea was divided and is still divided, because of North Korea, because of China, because, let's say, of communism. That is the fear of the communist alternative being supported by the people of South Korea led the US leadership to allow for Korea a non-conventional way of developing and supporting it even by offering advantages to South Korea for its exports to North America, to the United States. Very funny. De facto state companies, even if formally they were private, as I said, a state capitalism, were allowed to sell, to export to the United States.
And if we turn our attention now to Africa, how do we finance industrialization if we do delink? I mean, it is a massive constraint here that we don't have the financial resources in particular.
You are right. It is a constraint. It is an important, but it is only one constraint among many others. First, there are important capacities of internal financing which are not mobilized, because the surplus, for instance, which is produced in agriculture, in the sectors exporting agricultural products, for instance tea today, or groundnut yesterday. I mean, it's losing its place. Or many other agricultural products which Africa is being compelled to export. The surplus which is produced by labor and natural resources in those sectors is captured by monopoly capital. Now, if we have national policies, including internal and control of external relations, which is clever, which is consistent, we can recapture this surplus or a good part of it to the benefit of our financing our industrialization. There are now countries in the south which have financial means, huge financial means. I mean, Brazil, the Development Bank of Nordeste Brazil has a turnover, a capital larger than the World Bank, one bank only in Brazil. Now the banks of the BRICS, and particularly a number of Chinese institutions and the Chinese state, have financial needs. It doesn't mean that they will use it spontaneously in the best way for us, no. But that opens the room, there is a room for negotiating on those grounds. Because China, for instance, does not put conditionalities. It is saying in some cases severely, not even political conditionalities. So, for instance, that you will be the democratic state or I don't know what, which is in many cases a masquerade, of course. But anyway, but also economic conditionalities. So that, you know, I discussed this matter in Zambia precisely. I was invited when there was a change a few years ago in Zambia, and asked the question by the president himself, to me personally, what should we do with China? I said, frankly, China, they know what they want in Zambia. They want copper, which means they want to have access to the production, access and guaranteed access to export of that copper to China, and some system of pricing. And they are ready to negotiate that. But in counterpart, what do you want, you Zambia? Now, if you know what you want, if you have a plan of internal development for agriculture and industry, you can negotiate it. The ball is in your hands. But if you have nothing, if you don't know what you want, if you want nothing, of course the Chinese will take advantage, and you will have no advantage from that cooperation, or so-called cooperation. I went further, and I said, I dare to say, Mr. President, if the only thing that you want is $100 million in your private pocket, the Chinese will do it. It's very cheap for them. But if you have a plan for your own industrial development, you can have access and you can discuss it. So the financial constraint is a real one, but it is not either you accept Western financial support, which is not support, or zero. No, it's not that. And Western financial support, there are no countries in the world which are more open than African countries. Does foreign investment comes to Africa? It goes to China, which is controlling foreign investment. It does not go to Africa, which is not controlling. When it comes to us for one of the two following reasons. One, to plunder, particularly mineral resources. Second, speculation. Financing speculation. And I guess that a lot of speculation, particularly in urban buildings, which needs a lot of finance. It's very costly, is easily financed through local banks, foreign banks, and so on, thanks to that pattern of foreign investments, which does not contribute to the development of your country.
As a final question, though, when you were discussing financing, you were talking about knowing what you want and having this kind of plan. And thinking, what kind of a model, what kind of a system can you put in place to look after that, given the rapid political turnover that you have in decision making and various other constraints? We haven't, from what I was hearing, not an advocacy, but you're looking at a state-led developmental state at a time where we're hearing about private sector-led development. How do we reconcile this as a final question?
This is precisely the false opposition. State or private? No. It must be state, and the private initiatives should be not only tolerated, but integrated in the national state policy. And that is very different from just leaving private doing anything.
Sure. Well, on that note, as we're out of time, I want to thank you very much for coming onto the program and sharing your thoughts with us. And I look forward to having you on again, because there's a lot of other topics we could discuss.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You know, I have been very often in Tanzania, particularly in the 70s, in the time of the very lively discussions in the country and at the University of Dar es Salaam. I was coming here almost every year and spending not 2 or 3 days, but 2 or 3 or 4 weeks each time, discussing with professors, teachers, activists, students, officials of the country, ministers, including President Nyerere himself. So it was I have the best memory of Tanzania. And I hope you go back, but beyond. We are not going to have a remake of the 70s. No, there are no remake. A remake is always a bad film. But not forgetting what had been started in those times, to go beyond.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sure.